Right, fabulous. Delighted to be back. Welcome everyone to Future Work Scotland. This is our May edition. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sathpal Singh. I'm the organiser at Future Work Scotland. I am on my own this evening. My co-organiser and co-pilot of these events, Donald Henderson, has some other prior engagements, so he unfortunately cannot be with us this evening. We're very much looking forward to this, and thank you to all of you who've joined us for this session. Very excited about what's coming up. Just the usual formalities. We have a very simple code of conduct here at Future Work Scotland. We ask everyone to be respectful to one another. We want everyone to have a great learning experience. This is a learning community. Tom and I were talking about it just before you all came on. And we pride ourselves on creating the kind of space where everyone can come here and learn something and learn from one another. So that's very important to us at Future Work Scotland, has been for all the years we've been running these events. If you have any questions as we go along through the session, please feel free to drop them into the chat, into the Zoom chat. If you can prefix them with a Q, it will make it a lot easier for me to spot them in amongst a lot of the other conversations which are typical at these sorts of events. So if you could do that's helpful for me. And we'll do a few community shout outs at the end. There are a few interesting things coming up, which we would love to share with you. So look out for those at the end. And as I've explained, if you do need to drop off, don't worry. We record all of our sessions so you can catch up on anything you missed from the recording. And with that, I'm really delighted actually in this particular session to be welcoming our guest speaker, not least because Tom is a regular attendee at Future Work Scotland. He comes to many of the sessions and he is a very active contributor to this community. He shares a lot of his content. He has a strong long-standing history in Agile. We were talking about that just before we came on, and various other things, and some very nice, interesting little facts that he shared about himself in his bio, which I'm not going to spoil that. So if you want to check that out, have a look. He might mention some of that in his introduction. But I'm delighted to have Tom here. As I say, he's got a long history in these communities. I've learnt a lot from Tom and following his work and dipping in and out of his extensive body of work, which he does typically share when he joins us. So it's thrilling to have him here as our guest speaker for May. And I think you're really going to enjoy this session. This is actually, as we just discussed, a world exclusive because this is a brand new talk that's never been done. And Tom is actually sharing it tomorrow at a Berlin meetup, as I believe. But he can tell you a little bit more about that. So, Tom, welcome. It's great to have you here. Over to yourself, sir.
Tom may be on mute.
Aha. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to keep this up here a little while to give you a fair shot at copying the link with the QR code or whatever is good. And then you get all of the slides. So let's see. I also want to get rid of the floating meeting control so I can see my own slides. Very nice. Okay, I've got about 45 slides here. I added 4 more last night, the latest news. That gives me very, very roughly a little over a minute a slide. And I have a very bad habit or a very good habit, depending on your point of view, which is I put far too much words and pictures in each slide. And I don't expect I will tell you every word in there or you will read every word at all. What I'm going to try to do is give you almost a highlight sentence about what that's about. And then if you're interested, you can go back and read it in your own time and study it. And if you're not, don't worry about it. So don't worry about the detail. Try to pick up maybe one interesting idea per slide at the level of a few words. Okay. Now, ends and means. As we'll see, here's a little title, The Hierarchy of Confusion. and we're going to give some quotes from various people about, and you've probably experienced this, that people do mix up the ends and the means of what they're doing. Synonyms for ends and means, by the way, are things like ends are like requirements or objectives or visions. And means, that's like design, architecture, strategies. I hope that helps sort out a little bit. Well, I'm going to go into excruciating depth on this. Okay. Yeah, I believe you'll find that I have an advanced theory of requirements and design, and I'm hoping this will help everybody avoid the confusion of ends and means, the oversimplification of them, and ultimately, I hope they will avoid degrees of failure in their projects. What do words mean? What does ends mean? What does requirements mean? Well, if I asked everybody in the meeting here to write in the chat their definitions, go ahead. I can't actually read the chat from where I am, so I have to look at it later. But I'm pretty sure we would not get one single definition from two people or more. Everybody would have something different. And not only that, they would be substantially, not trivially different. But that's the nature of the language, number one. It's quite natural, happens all the time. And it may even be useful if you're a politician trying to give bigger teacups to the workers, as we used to say. Anyway, I have a habit in my methods, which are called planning language. And there's a book called Competitive Engineering, and there's a free copy of the Competitive Engineering book, PDF, in the references at the end of the slides. If you can't find it, a problem, write me a note, I'll get it to you. In the book, we have a glossary. And in the glossary, I define concepts, the concept of an end, the concept of a means. But then I assign a name to it, like ends. But then I might say, well, requirements is a synonym, okay? And OKR might be an acronym. And I even number them and do all kinds of things with them. So I have many pointers to the concept. And I say the concept is the concept, no matter how you point to it, okay? And there's another rule that when working in my working environment, whatever that means, then the rules are my definition applies. You have a right to have other definitions, but if you use them together with other people, you'll confuse them. So don't do it, please. Just stick with the agreed definition. And in an emergency, you can share your definition. Say, when I say requirement, I mean user stories. Okay. So, nice little illustration from the book where Humpty Dumpty declares that the question is, who is to be the master of the word? And the answer is Humpty Dumpty. And I'm sort of Humpty Dumpty in that connection. Here are the links to the glossaries. As of a few days ago, my son just announced to me that he's got taken the largest glossaries, which are 700 concepts, 692 there, and he has massaged them enormously with AI, and he's got a really cool tool. It's called Tom Twin, which knows a great deal more about those words than what I even put in the book, because it's analyzed back and forth with AI, how everything is related, made some drawings. It's quite, so anybody's very interested in the automation of these, take contact. There's actually a link hiding in the back of the lecture to that tool. So yeah, glossary. Now, so here's an entry from the glossary. This is concept number 100. And it's the word end in our talk. And it's a future, that's a very, most important word is future. Requirement or objective, synonyms essentially, although I differentiate in certain cases between them, but right now I'm just, that level of performance we want in the future, a desired end state. Okay, related concepts and all kinds of funny little things. Here's a book my sister picked up from the author when she was on a cruise once. Really interesting book about Leonardo. And he's supposed to be one of the smartest characters on the planet ever. Think well to the end. Consider first the end. So if that was important for Leonardo da Vinci, I hope it will be important for you, and you'll wonder, why did he think that was so important? What was he trying to get across? Here's the term goal. Here, a goal is a primary numeric target level of performance. By the way, all of these words are also defined, but I won't go through them. There's lots of notes about it. We even have, for a little bit of fun, Humpty Dumpty's glory defined here. And there are all kinds of symbols I use to, here, for example, is a target or goal along a scale of measure of, let's say, user friendliness from virtually nothing to fantastic user friendliness. And this point on the scale is our goal, it's our target, it's our objective. And there's a lot more about this in detail in the competitive engineering book, for example. Now, ends and means. So here's the means. And I do have nice, simple, short, well thought out definitions. This one, by the way, I wrote in 2001 and published in the book 2005. I've updated it a little bit, probably some stuff around here, 2020. I keep track of that. But these definitions are very stable. They serve the test of time. So, yeah. Hello, Monica from Romania, a friend of mine just popped in. That's nice to see you here, sir, lady. Okay, so means are the devices. What's a device? Well, look that up too. But it's anything, I don't care. It could be a plan, it could be a purchase order, it could be somebody knocking you down with their fist. All of those are devices. But the point is, you use it to reach your ends, to reach your objectives. And it can be just anything. I mean, superhuman, Superman power. I don't care. Anyway, now there's this more or less means is another way of saying what we often say design. Here are quite a few synonyms, but they all have this characteristic. They are the devices by which ends are reached. And a lot more here, but here's actually somebody got very confused about all this, so I thought I'd quote them for fun. Next, we have the concept of a design idea. Okay, that's a particular class of means. Okay, if you have a design idea, I'm trying to help people visualize what design is. So if this is a function, this little circle here, functionality, what the system does, it writes invoices. Really simple. And this arrow represents some value or quality, like usability or security. And here's perfect security, but that's too expensive. So we've chosen the level of security, let's call it 99.9%. And that's right here on the scale. That's 100%. Now, if I can find a design that brings me from where I started, this is my starting point at the beginning of the project. And when I implement the whole design, I actually get to my goal, 99.9, then I'd call that a perfect design. At least in one dimension, it's perfect, fits the bill. Unfortunately, designs are not in one dimension. They have costs and they have side effects and all kinds of other nasty things. And they even have, maybe it worked the first day, but then it didn't afterwards problems. So, but this is I'm trying to simplify, what is design? It's that thing that helps make your value indicators. Your objectives go towards their end state that you want, quite simply. Here, by the way, is the perfect design, but this is a symbol for the resources, the tiger in the tank. And I've got a budget right there. And it turns out the perfect design doesn't use more than my budget. That would be there. It uses just a little bit less. And if I didn't have anything else to do, great. The design fits the resource. So that's a slightly more perfect design. It not only delivers the value, but it does so within budget. Everybody happy. Meet a man I met once. I visited him in San Francisco in his apartment, and he walked me from his apartment down the hall to his office down the hall from his apartment. And both of them had a stunning view of Alcatraz, the prison. Anyway, nice view of the bay. By the way, I have a similar view. No, you can't see it with my slides on, but I'm actually overlooking the Oslo fjord where all the ships go into Oslo at my summer cabin. So happy to show you a picture if we get a camera running or something like that. Keeney's interesting for several things. He talks about different levels of these objectives, like top management level and, the test planner level or something like that, and then everything in between here. And he had an ingenious idea. He said, look, we can think of objectives this way. If you have some objectives that are yours, your level of concern, then anything below you are in aid of helping you get to your objectives. And he calls them means objectives. And anything above you, like your boss or boss's boss or boss's boss, we'll call them fundamental objectives. In other words, you better do it or you're out of business. You can't, your strategic objectives have to help deliver something in the upwards chain. Okay, very interesting ideas about the ends of objectives in management thinking. Now, I've wandered quite a bit with managers and my clients, and I noticed how often they worry about the IT people being aligned with everything else in the company instead of just going off doing their thing. And unaligned means you're wasting money and time, not really supporting the team. Unaligned. So I've got a device here I'll introduce briefly, and you can get several free books. The Competitive Engineering book has a chapter on this. I call it an impact estimation table. My son likes to call it a value decision table, but doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a table, as you see. Now, on this axis, we have 1, 2, 3 quality requirements. And we have a budget requirement. So those are our requirements. On this axis, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe more off the page, designs or means. So means, ends. And so we have some numbers and some bar charts in the middle. And you can probably guess, this actually means that this utilitarian motivation strategy will deliver 92% of the way to the goal. So that is defined on a scale of measure. This is our starting point, our base, our zero in progress, and then we start. And when we get to the 20% that we wish to achieve, that's 100% of our goal. So this gets us most of the way from here to here, and we can see this very graphically. By the way, these other strategies help us a little bit. That's nice, but this is maybe the main strategy, and we need a little bit of supplements. Okay. By the way, this strategy not only does that, but it actually helps us get 98% of the way to this goal and 15% of the way to this goal, and it consumes 17% of our budget. And you can compute interesting little things like the ratio of value to cost, also known as efficiency, return on investment, or value for money, or cost effectiveness. And you can compute a cost effectiveness figure, and then you can prioritize and this happens to be the green one here, because it has very high impacts, as you can visually see, and very low costs compared to that, you can visually see, and it's the winner. So this helps decide questions like what should we do first, or what should we choose this instead of this? Okay, very interesting. If you haven't encountered the tool, you might like to study it and make use of it. A simple spreadsheet gets you a long way in analyzing your technical complex systems. So, long story short, I'm trying to make a point that Keeney also made here. You heard the saying, one man's meat is another man's poison. Okay. Now, it turns out one man's strategies need to be supported by objectives at the level below. Okay. In other words, if I have a team supporting me, they have to have objectives that deliver to my objectives and support my objectives. Okay. Now, this is confusing because one and the same thing, a set of objectives, if it's my objectives at my point of view, that I view them as my objectives. If I have supporting teams delivering good qualities and subsets of the system to me, they view their objectives as their objectives, but I view them as strategic objectives, we can call them, as what they have to do strategically to deliver to my level. But what it means is, no wonder we're a bit confused about ends and means, because depending on point of view, it is either an ends or means depending on where you sit in the organization. Got it? Here's that cover picture. This is actually the outline for the whole talk, so I can probably save a lot of, but if you wanted a summary in one page, there it is. I fed that text to my friendly chat GPT, and it said, this is the picture. Okay. So here is this ladder of hierarchy of ends and means, and here's some other stuff. Now, here's a simplified version. I'm working with a friend of mine in Boston who's very proud of their colonial American heritage, breaking away from the evil English. And we Scottish do have a view on that. And so I got a drawing done in colonial style, 1776. But we're teaching kids these concepts of ends and means. So here's pure visual concepts, and here's some examples of ends and means. Now, you may or may not recognize this fellow because you don't usually see him in sandals with bare legs and shorts. But if you look at the head, it's even more recognizable, Albert Einstein. And I've known for years that he said, perfection of means and confusion of goals seem to characterize our age. Now, he died about 1954. I was 14 at the time, by the way, so I could have theoretically encountered him because he's actually sitting at a beach in California, and I lived on the beach in California then. So maybe I'm just walking by there. We'll imagine that. But I didn't actually have a chat with Einstein, and of course, couldn't possibly have understood his theories. But now, again, we have the genius Da Vinci getting concerned with ends, and the genius Einstein is concerned with the confusion of ends and means. So there's a signal here that this is an important problem that the most brilliant people on the planet profess to want to advise us on. Anyway, when I was writing the talk, where the title was Means and Ends, and I saw this goal thing here, I politely asked if since I knew this must be a translation from the German, because that's what Einstein did. If indeed the word Ziele could be translated as ends. And indeed, I got permission from AI. I said, "Go ahead, Tom." It's so I've retranslated Einstein to suit this lecture. Okay, now, but I delved a little bit deeper, and what I found was that Einstein didn't originate this. He said it, but he was quoting from a countryman, Arthur Schopenhauer, who wrote about 1851, which is a decade or so before Einstein was born, right? And he'd obviously read the works of Schopenhauer, famous philosopher in Germany. And here's the original sentence in German: Die Perfektion der Mittel und die Verwirrung der Ziele scheinen unser Zeitalter zu charakterisieren. I hope that goes over well in Berlin when I hold the same talk tomorrow. But now, why are people confused about the means? Well, I've got a simple theory, and it's a hypothesis, and it's probably wrong. But the means, the things you do and make, they're very concrete, very real, very visible. So we can relate to them and articulate them. Now, the moment you get to ends, and we're talking about something like cybernetic resiliency. I've written a whole book on that called Resilience. You'll find it in the back. That's pretty tricky because most of us have no idea how to clarify or quantify cybernetic resilience. By the way, some people do, and it's in my book, in case you wonder how to deal with very advanced security concepts with quantitative ends. But most qualities, and most of these ends are qualitative in some sense, they simply are not concrete things you can put in your lap and throw from one person to another. They are abstract concepts, and therefore people have difficulty with them unless specially trained. And if you read my books, you can train yourself in being an expert in this. Okay. Now, having bumped into Schopenhauer, who I'd vaguely heard of but really didn't know anything about, I discovered he talked about ends and means. So I thought, well, that must bring that into the thing here. Now, we'll simplify a little bit. You see, you may not recognize him, but this is Donald Trump. And he is going through a temporary objectification of winning Nobel Peace Prizes, stealing more money from the government and his population, things like that, finding more women to do criminal things to, things like that. And Schopenhauer points out that one should tell Donald that this is really going nowhere because he'll never be satisfied and never really achieve his aims. So would that stop the war in Iran if we told him? I don't know, but that's an interesting theory. But in other words, the means serve only to perpetuate the will's futile cycle, as satisfaction is illusory and short-lived. Well, thank you, Mr. Schopenhauer. And what he does recommend, as you sit and meditate on the Oslo Fjord, those are Norwegian mountains, and contemplate that maybe there are better things in life than pursuing money and fame and women or men, whatever your taste may be. Now, the moment we start talking about ends and means, somebody inevitably says, didn't Machiavelli said that the ends justify the means? In other words, if you have a very noble aspiration, maybe you can kill 80,000 people in the Middle East because you've got a noble aspiration. And some people, most politicians probably, believe something like that. They have noble aspirations, and they'll do anything to get there. And I think Trump is. I don't know if Trump has any noble aspirations except getting rich. But now it turns out that Machiavelli, writing the book called The Prince, there's the Italian Empire, and there's Machiavelli writing with a very modern pen. Is that a hallucination from AI? Well, there's got some old feather pens there. Anyway, enough of that. Now, some of you will have heard of Joseph Duran, the quality guru, who was trained together with my friend Dr. W. Edwards Deming under Walter Shewart at Western Electric Company, part of Bell Labs, and then went on to be a quality guru in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I met him once and talked with him once. Uh, uh, but I discovered long after he died that he'd written a book that I'm very interested in, but I had no idea he'd written it. Maybe you didn't either. But it's called Quality by Design, or formerly Duran on Quality by Design. But I love the title because people, how do you get quality? It's amazing how many IT people think you get quality by debugging the code. And you don't. You get a certain quality, you get fewer bugs, but you don't get better usability from that or better security or hardly at all. So basically, if you want any quality, any value, any ends, you have to use a discipline known as design, architecture, problem solving, call it what you like, but you have to find the means to get to your quality goals. And Duran wrote a whole book on it. Here's a simple little example of people being confused about what they want to buy. And here's a little example. For example, we say we want to be agile, which many people do. Instead of saying how much better results you expect to get if you use the means called be agile, then you're very likely to be agile and certified right, left, and center and doing all the rituals, but you might not get the better results you want because maybe the better results won't come from being agile, or they'll only come from doing agile in a certain way or together with other things. So, so this is the confusion of ends and means is in the sentence, we're agile, therefore everything's going to be fine. Now, very busy slide, and I'm just going to highlight some things. But I was talking with my friend Al Shalloway, and about these things. And he said he's an American and he's very well read. And he said John Dewey said something. Well, I sort of heard the name John Dewey, but I really couldn't tell you anything about him. So I dived in, and indeed, Mr. Dewey had something to say about ends and means, and quite deeply. I mean, here's even on 10 different quality angles. This is little impact estimation table, by the way. There's Dewey's perspective on each one. And by the way, it turns out Gilb has a perspective. So you can, go deeply and analyze Dewey and Tom and many things. But his insight, which I find tantalizing, you tend to think, well, here's that the end justifies the means quotation, which he rejected. Okay. And he said, no, the means, the design, the architecture determine the quality of the end. In other words, you choose an architecture, and whether you like it or not, it's got all kinds of nasty side effects and costs that determine how good that means really is, even though it satisfies your security needs or something like that. And the result is you need continuous evaluation of both. In other words, you have some objectives and you find some IT architecture, and then you discover it's too bloody expensive. And then you say, well, shall I up the budget or, de-scope the architecture? And point is, and you might go several cycles of adjusting your architecture so that it fits not only your security, but maybe your economics and your usability and your performance and things like that. Very deep thought, this one. You might want to go back to it. I certainly felt it was, for me, new, interesting, worthy, and there's a lot of detail here. There's the man himself, as you can guess. He puts it, there's more Dewey here, but we'll just do the sentence. The worth of an end, in other words, the goodness of your objectives or requirements, is understood by understanding the means used to achieve it. Very profound. My God, more Dewey. Okay, we'll let him pass. If you're interested in IT ethics, I did a lecture for the British Computer Society on that, and got deeply into ethical ends and means. I've got a whole talk on it. You'll find in the back in the references. Forget the exacts. I think probably ethics. Here are some ethical ends. I've written, patient safety, quality of patient complying. These are all ethics things, more or less. I've described them in my planning language, Planguage, which many of you will not know anything about. But I'm a firm believer in making important things like ethical considerations extremely clear. So I have a scale of measure for it. I have a way of measuring it. I know what number I'm at right now in my present system, and I know what the worst acceptable case is in 3 years, and I know what I'm dreaming about in 6 years. I know very clearly what I want to do. Here's one of my favorite guys. At university in Norway, they require you to study philosophy whether you like it or not. You're simply not allowed to do any other study or exam until you've passed your examen philosophicum, as they call it in Latin. And so I bumped into Rene Descartes. Here's a quotation from Rene Descartes. What does that mean? Into as many parts as possible. What's that? That is decomposition. I'll say this in simplistic Scrum language. This is decomposition into sprints. Got it? That's all he's talking about. But he is what he's famous for doing is saying, "Look, I'll grab something, no matter how complex Dave Snowden thinks it is, and I will analyze it by dividing it into its constituent parts. And I'll try to understand each part, but more importantly, I'll understand how they connect together." So that's a little thing there. And then that's dividing the difficulty into parts. And then I'll analyze the problems. And then I'll make complete enumerations. In other words, I would look at the system of parts numerically. I wrote a book, 1976, called Software Metrics. Under SM in the references, you can get yourself a free PDF if you want to see how I started life in 1976, about 50 years ago, right? Anyway, wonderful little principles of science here, too, except nothing is true, but, carefully avoid prejudice in judgments and see things clearly and distinctly, so I would have no occasion to doubt it. Flowery language. The original is French, of course. Anyway, Rene Descartes, he had 4 general rules for rational thinking. By the way, I wrote a little book, which you'll find free copy of in the back, called Split. And Split is all about decomposition of anything and everything in IT systems or corporate systems. If you want to go really deep and become an expert in decomposition, then actually I was listening to CNN yesterday, and the Georgia Tech professor was on, and he said, we need to teach people really fundamental ideas, including the decomposition of problems. I simply looked him up, wrote him an email, and he wrote me back this morning and said, thank you for offering all your books, Tom, but have you got some videos instead? I wrote back and sent him a list of all my videos, and this will be one of them. We can send it to him. Okay. This is quite a charming little story. This is the American telephone system. This is the electronic switching system, which switches the telephone calls. This is generation 4. This is generation 5. And this is the 2015 level. And it has availability back when of 99.90. Then they spent 5,000 employees for 20 years and developed 5 ESS. So the availability went up a bit. And they decided to go for broke here, 99.998% availability, uptime, in 2015. Quite charming. The interesting lesson you have here is that the difference between that 0 and that 8 is actually 20 times 5,000 man years. In other words, if you're going for extremely high quality, like perfection, which will definitely cost you infinite budget, then as you approach infinity in cost and quality, you'll find there's a logarithmic leap and shocking. Okay, one of the consequences of this is you're doing really high-class, large-scale systems like the American telephone system or British Telecom or something like that. Then the 5th decimal point is, and the 5th digit is necessary for expressing one end, the availability. That's the lesson there. Okay, just saying we want very high availability is okay if you're doing small, trivial systems, but not if you're earning a fortune working on very expensive systems and know what you're doing. Now, there's another Dewey, is the same one, right? Oh, sorry, I get mixed up with Thomas Dewey sometimes, the politician. So there's the same Dewey we were talking about. There's somebody you'll find in, I visited his grave in Hampstead in Highgate Cemetery. His name is Karl Marx. And he's, more interestingly, he's right next to the grave of Douglas Adams, author of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, who told us the answer to everything in the universe, 42, right? Anyway, here's another guy, a couple of guys. One is called Plato and the other is called Socrates. Now, if you don't recognize them, well, you haven't seen them on TV recently. They're walking down the street and somebody probably made up this. They sort of look like me, actually, when I have a full beard. But okay, now the thing that these guys have in common is how clear they were about their ends and means. And here, keep it really simple. Socrates insisted on defining the word piety before launching into any further discourse about it. His friend Plato insisted in the Republic on defining the word justice in detail before getting into this discourse. Karl Marx spent his efforts on defining commodity, and John Dewey wondered what the word experience meant. So, in other words, here we have 4 very famous men who were fanatics, like Tom Gilb, on well-defined concepts. There's some more about that, not to worry. Here's some more about the ethical means. And I think that more Dewey, more ethical means, but I'm gonna skip this. It takes too much time. There's one of the resilience objectives that I mentioned. It's decomposed into all these sub-objectives, like robustness, risk tolerance, redeployment. That might be more interesting for the IT people. Here is a quantification using language of adaptability, which is part of the resilience means objectives here. So, there, adaptability. Yes, we define agility quantitatively for resilient systems. You'll recognize the impact estimation table with many requirements, some costs, many designs, and an attempt to quantify and even visualize the degree to which this design impacts these things. And these things here, they're so-called known unknowns. In other words, we know that this has impact all over the place, but nobody's bothered to take a guess or ask AI what it is or measure it. So we don't know. And therefore, every one of these is a very high risk thing to do. This is lower risk for the simple reason that however bad it might be, and red is bad, bad side effects, that at least we know what we're getting into. This could be horrendous and catastrophic. Oh, here's that curve we looked at a moment ago. As you go towards perfect qualities up here, you get diminishing return. You spend more and more and more money and get just a little bit better, but nobody cares and it's not worth it. So that's a concept I learned as a young British sixth form economics student, was the diminishing return on investment idea. That's right here. Here's a policy for ethics if you want to be ethical. Now, I was invited by one of the founders, main guys in Jobs to Be Done. Some of you will know about that. And my friends in Berlin are, like Torolf Klatt, are very interested in it. So it's especially for the Berlin gang, I've got this in here. And I'll leaf through it quite frivolously. But if you're interested in it, if you're interested in Jobs to Be Done, you'll be very interested in what I have to say. Okay. Now, I was asked by the owner of the main company there to solve a problem for him. He said, here's an example of a Jobs to Be Done number 33. It's a requirement sort. It's written by a surgeon who's attaching a tissue plane on hands or something like that. But this is the surgeon's idea of what's required to do. And Jobs to Be Done is incredible because it takes one little task like doing a hand operation, and it comes up with well, there's number 33, but it comes up with maybe 100 little requirements that the surgeon has to do things, right? Now you notice something about this. It says minimize and time, but there are no numbers here except the number of the tag. That doesn't count. Okay, so that's part of my story here. Now, what I did was, the challenge to me was, he said, we've got all these very deep requirements, but we don't know how to design to do the job better, to make this happen. We simply don't know. Can you tell us why we don't know? I said, yeah, I can tell you why I don't know. This has got a lot of vague, ambiguous words, and it's imprecise. Here is a precise example using language with, numbers and scales of measure coming out of your ears and things like that. Here's this thing here is, oopsie, put up in the ambition level with the citation, Jobs to Be Done 33, but I've rewritten it in language so that it's excruciatingly clear. Now, it turns out if you have vague goals, then the range of means of designs is quite wide. In fact, some of them will be great for the surgeon, and some of them will be disastrous. But you have no way of knowing because the surgeon hasn't been precise enough to tell us exactly what he needs and what he does not need. In other words, the Jobs to Be Done requirements are a very poor form of requirements, like user stories and all that jazz. And if you want to do serious work, like saving the lives or hands of human beings, you need to do what engineers and scientists do, and you need to go metrics, software metrics, 1976. Here's that same ambiguity. And just for fun, I asked my favorite little AI to take every word in it and give some of the possible interpretations. Now, you can see at a glance how ambiguous this is and how it really isn't going to save the life of anybody's hands at the surgeon. Okay. Yeah, enough of that. More detail for those interested in it. And now, this is the adults only section, and I've got order of magnitude 10, 20 minutes left. Here is one of these impact estimation tables. But just to remind you of the structure, because that's the important idea. So here are our ends. Here is a set of means. By the way, these are means for the problem of the hand operation, the surgical team, etc. So this is what I was commissioned to do. How do we design so the surgeon gets better hand operations? Here's the design. Okay. Here are the clear quantified goals. And then here is some rating of how good this set of things are. They could be alternatives or supplementary, yet remains to be seen. Okay. Here's something I'm playing with. I'll show you as we go towards the end. It's a fascinating thing. It's called tacit knowledge. And when we write requirements, there's often something implied but not stated. So because it's implied and not stated, it doesn't get into the requirement. But that means people dealing with requirements can ignore it because it's not in the requirement. Okay. I have recently, like this week, built an automated tool that analyzes requirements for implied knowledge and pulls it out. And I'm going to show you a picture of that towards the end. More details about explicit, implicit knowledge. Oh, goodness. Okay, this is the last section. I only have 4 slides left. Might even end on the hour. That's good. Okay. So last month I've been building a little tool I call SEM. That stands for stakeholders, ends, and means. And this is the level above, and this is the level below. So that's sort of the theme of the app. And I've started writing a book. There's the free copy of the book I started writing. You can go to it and find a lot more than I'm showing you now. And in the next week or so, I'm going to be writing a few hundred more pages. So look at this a little later to watch it accumulating, see what this amazing tool does with ends and means. So I feel like I've got an ends and means tool called an ends and means tool. Okay, but I'll give you some idea of what it does. So yesterday morning, I was playing with a friend of mine, Graham Matthew, in Melbourne, Australia. Hello, New Zealand out there. And we decided to play a little game with the tool. It's just, let's say it's a prototype, but it's far more than that. But I'm playing with it now before we seriously implement and market the ideas. And Graham, although he's actually very, very deep expert in Agile and its history and other things like that, and is an IT consultant, he's very interested in his gardening. So we had about an hour or two together. So I said, why don't we do a little project, and you just tell me what you think is important. So this is his sentence: thoroughness of the garden plan for spring vegetables. Da 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 da. So we fed that into the tool. This is the aperture or window, just like a Google aperture for the tool. What's your project about? Okay. And this tool allows you to babble with management business stories or user stories. And the app will help you sort out the confusion of ends and means, reference back to Schopenhauer and Einstein. You don't have to learn my rigorous planning language called Planguage. It's in the background, in the computer, and the AI knows it better than you do, so don't worry about it. Okay, that's right. Round up within 10 minutes. I'm on track to do that. So what it does initially, I called an auto parse. It parses that, and it says the stakeholders. That's this gang, like doctors, nurses, hospitals, GDPR, and the ends, the how well, the goals and the value. That's this lot, if it's parsed correctly. And the strategies you've mumbled about or didn't are these two. So it's structured into S, E, and M, basically a very basic structure, but it is trying to separate the ends and the means. By the way, where do the ends come from? By definition, they come from the stakeholders. They are the ends of the stakeholders. So if you know about a stakeholder, you can analyze their ends. If you fail to understand that GPR is a stakeholder, which it is, then you will not analyze the European regulations. You will not have a goal to do so. You will not do the strategies, and you will not be allowed on the air because you have an illegal system. That's pretty important. Here's part of the tool. I have a thing called a flow diagram. So here's flow diagram. The tool has generated the following values, like system uptime, database availability, encrypted integrity. Okay. These values are attached to certain functions, what the system does, and stakeholders, of which there are many, like it says here, government, secure, probably can't read that very well, but the stakeholders deal with a system which has a certain basic function, like a hand operation. And that hand operation, as we saw, has certain qualities or values. And these qualities or values are delivered to the doctor doing the hand operation through solutions or means. So here we have ends and means. These functions are also ends. And stakeholders are the ones who have the needs that are the ends, that are the functions, that are the values. This is the ends area, okay? But this is the means area. We'll see it, okay? And the first level of means is your big ideas, your architecture. Okay, now let's just say for the sake of argument that this database redundancy automated replication design, which by the way, it's done for you automatically, this is automated design, will take 1 year to implement, and you've got an impatient manager who's going to pay you every week if you deliver some results. So you're not going to earn anything for a year. And so you say, I know, I'll divide it into little sprints. Now, I have another name for the sprints and another definition, but they're called evolutionary stakeholder value delivery steps. And what they are is like weekly or monthly, but they're small increments of this design idea. So we'll do, we'll do this maybe in 10 increments, 10 weekly increments to get this whole thing done. But each increment will deliver some of the value, maybe just to this one, and then maybe half of this and half of this. Doesn't matter, but you'll be gradually. This is my EVO method. This is my language method. This is far more advanced than things like Scrum. Okay, even Jeff Sutherland has said that in public. Okay, so yeah. So okay, so here this map says, look, you've got this design idea, but it automatically, the tool finds the design idea on the basis of these quantified goals, and then it takes the design idea and said, you wanted weekly increments. Here's week 1, week 2, week 3, and what's the difference? By the way, in back here, which you can't see, is the EVOS things are divided into tasks. So there's actually 1, 2, 3 levels of decomposition or splitting up design ideas. Here's a more detailed view. If you actually click, let's see, going back, the right way. If you go back and click, not me, this is hoovering over this, gives all these connections dynamically. But if you click on it, then make sure we're in the right direction, then it gives you an enlarged view of the value and its specification direct relations. This is a new feature I just installed this week, so it's absolutely the latest news on my games. And then the value is related to this stakeholder, this solution, and this function. And this is automatically done. Here's even the scale of measure with the goal quantified with the self-understanding goal. I hope that bowls some of you over a little bit. No user stories here. That's for kids. Here's another, more or less same thing, but I put different labels on it. So here are the values of the stakeholder. Here's what we do. Here are the stakeholders related to that. Here's the design, which our automated design or automated IT architect has done. IT architects, go get yourself another job like the coders, because AI is taking over. And it has, designed how to get to the values, and then it's divided them up into, weekly or monthly increments. And then it takes each one of these weeklies and says, we have to do the following list of tasks to do it. And all of this totally automated. I did this today for a plan for a small business owner, and this we were at this level within 15 minutes of starting the conversation. So it works very rapidly. Same map in a way. I've just emphasized the means areas and the ends areas here in the value flow diagram. Now we have 5 minutes left. There's some very sophisticated stuff in this app. One is called a sharpening cycle. Now, sharpening cycle is you got a rough plan, you're not quite happy with it, you think you might have forgotten something, so you have about 20 different options for sharpening, like competitiveness, innovation, return on investment, risks, usability, security. You got the idea? There's categories of making your plan better. So you pick one. Okay, this is a priority, I think, and then what it does is it asks you questions and gets answers. I'll go through this in a minute. It asks you questions, having analyzed your plan in AI detail, and then gone to the rules of language, which are hundreds built into the tool, but they're the same ones as in the competitive engineering book. And it also goes out to the internet, to all known knowledge about the domain you're talking about. And it puts all that together. And one, it gives you very good questions and it gives you very good answers. But when the answers are done, the answer you've made is a high level requirement, in fact. And the app immediately goes in and changes your entire detailed language plan, maybe in 32 different places, with new stakeholders, different formulation of the value goal level, and things like that. So it's completely automated business analysis with architectural redesign at a detailed level using AI. This is working now. If you think I'm joking, book an hour of fun with me and I'll show it to you personally. I'm the only one who can actually run this right now. It's running on my private 7 gigabyte public sector AI on my Mac, the same one I'm doing this from. Okay, so it's very well hidden, but it's going to rapidly become a part of Tom's twin, as we call it. Anyway, so at one point, actually the bottom of the sharpening cycle, it says, give your own, we're in the innovation cycle. It says, okay, I've asked you some questions, you've given some answers, but why don't you give me your answer? What are you thinking about innovation? And somebody said pollution prevention. Now you have some options here, like analyze this, suggest a better idea, suggest 5 better ideas, suggest a sharper formulation of my idea. Anyway, analysis suggestion was pressed, and here is the analysis, referring even to the values already, the compliance value and the climate appropriateness value in the plan as it stands today. And if you like it, if you like it, you push a little button saying integrate in the plan, I'm done. Okay. Now you can have 20 different sharpening cycle types, and you can repeat them any number of times. You can have in one day, you could do enormous sharpening of the plan. And AI is your friend there. And you can, it's the essential thing is you're going to get better plans that are going to succeed more often. It's that simple. That's the end of the talk. here, by the way, and I'm at 910, which is sort of the outer limit, so that good boy. These are the references. And you can page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that enough to read? Free books, everything. I love giving away knowledge, and you've got it. If you want to become one of the world's best experts in planning, I suggest you start reading a book. So I'm done.
Fantastic. Do you want to stop your screen share, Tom?
Yeah, I'm working on it. If I can just find the right
Yeah, no,
button,
it's
I'll
fine.
do it.
Take your time,
Yeah.
and we
So
can
let's see,
see everyone.
Zoom, and then
I can probably do it. I can take over
it'd be
it or
great if
something.
you could, because I can't find it
Replace
right now.
current share. What would I do? I would just
Can you see the picture of my boys?
hopefully you could probably see my share now, aren't you?
Oh,
And
there's
then
Paul Grew. Hello, Paul.
I stopped it. Right,
Yeah.
so that was just I took over, but I think the obvious way to take over it is to take over it and share, and then I stop the shares. So anyway, that was very thought provoking. Thank you. I can't remember the last time we hosted the talk here where I felt like there was perhaps several months worth of reading to follow up with. So, but I'm used to you bringing that type of thing here.
Uh,
So
yeah. By, by, by,
thank you
by the
for
way,
that.
it takes 4 years to get a bad degree worth nothing. Imagine how much time it takes to become competent.
Yes, that's I think that's an excellent point.
I've
But no,
I've used I've used 60 years personally.
okay.
Seriously.
Yeah, well,
I'm
I
I'm
think
I'm
it
I'm
takes a long time.
85 and I'm still learning. And I shared some of the things I'd learned that I didn't know before.
Mhm.
You know?
No, that came across.
Yeah.
That came across. So thank you for that. I was at a couple of points, given I'd already seen the deck and knew how long it was, like where you were getting to. But obviously there were bits where you just wanted to make a very quick point. But no, thank you for that. I think there's lots for us all to take away. I'm sure others in the group feel the same way. I was scribbling notes about things I'd like to follow up on and perhaps read some of the other resources that you've shared. I think some of the information around, decomposing work, and obviously ethics is becoming is coming to the forefront again, thankfully, with AI, etc. And jobs to be done is always something that does come up. So I think those were three things for me. We do have about 10 minutes, maybe, then I need about 5 minutes to share some announcements and interesting other learning opportunities with you all. Any questions for Tom? Thank you again, Tom. That was wonderful.
Thank you for
Any
inviting me. That was the
No.
world's first time I've held this talk, so you had this world exclusive.
Yes.
By the way, I put in the chat my email, tom@gilb.com, and you're very welcome to ask me questions afterwards, after you've had a chance to digest it and read a little bit. Just free, right? I'm retired. I'm having fun. I love to answer your questions. So just fire off questions to me, and you will be surprised how fast you get a real answer. Okay, so it doesn't matter what we do with questions now, as long as they have this opportunity afterwards.
Well, I appreciate you offering that to our community. Actually, I'm hoping people will take you up on that. We've certainly exchanged emails on a few things over the years. I do see a question here from Monica, so I'm going to attempt to grab
I
it
see
and
it
see if I
too.
can
Yeah,
play it back. Let me just
I
read it
see
out
it.
for everyone's benefit then.
Righto.
So, in complex real-world systems, ends can be uncertain, evolving or differently interpreted across stakeholders. How should we manage the ends means relationship when the ends are not sufficiently stable to guide the selection and evaluation of means? Nice question.
Okay, I'll attempt. Yeah, short answer. Now, I probably could extemporaneously do a 1 hour lecture in answering it, but I won't. We've only got a few minutes, so I'll simplify a little bit. But I promise you, there is more. Now, I'm a fanatic on what I call Evo cycles. What are they? They're sort of like sprints, but they've got a lot more feedback and learning numerically built into them than sprints do. Okay. Now, So what you do is you start with the best ends you have, and nobody can think of anything better. At some point, you have to stop procrastinating eternally, discussing the requirements for a year or two. That's called Big Bang waterfall method. Okay, grab some requirements today and say tomorrow we're going to act on the assumption that this requirement is pretty good this week. Now, if it is, the users or stakeholders will dance in the streets with joy that something's finally happening, and we'll have a pretty good clue that that requirement was on the ball. If, on the other hand, the trade union comes out and is going to close you down, and I've had that happen at my aircraft manufacturer clients, you know that that was probably not a good requirement to implement. In other words, the short answer is if you try out the requirement ideas early, you'll find out what's good, what's bad, and you can tune it, you can adjust it. So that it be, and even if you adjusted it perfectly in a half a year, it may become invalid the next month. So you still got to keep the feedback coming and adjustment. So there's an eternal adjustment and there's an eternal uncertainty what the requirements are. The best you can do is quickly react to feedback from the stakeholders. Short answer. Long answers, plenty of them.
Is there a particular resource you'd cite or suggest Monica follow up on around this particular? I know the question's
Yes.
quite
Okay. Now
generic around the
there's
stuff you've covered.
no there's one book I have in the back there, free one. It's called Evo, EVO. That's the book on getting the evolutionary feedback and learning from it. That's a pretty good starter kit.
Excellent. Hopefully, Monica, that was helpful.
Yeah, I
Useful.
know
I
Monica.
see a
She's
thank you.
from
Right.
Romania, and she's a fellow lecturer at various places.
Fantastic.
Good lady.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you for the question,
Thank you,
Monica.
Monica.
We still have time for maybe one or two more if there are any burning questions or reflections or thoughts or anything that really captured your attention from Tom's very insightful talk. I think there was lots of interesting things in there. Certainly, I learned a lot of things and lots of things I'd like to continue to delve into. Any Rob, you're off mute. I don't know if that's deliberate. Are you want to come in here?
Yeah, why not?
I just spotted you. Go for it.
Yeah, why not? First of all, I want to say thank you, Tom. It's obvious you've got a long career and a lot of thought put into this. I've read an amount of your work over the last time, and I keep going back to it. I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm just going to literally put you on the spot, and I'm going to say,
You can have fun trying.
I'm sure. No, I'm going to basically to look at a more sort of practical, pragmatic, or maybe. Over the time that you've been working with clients, that you've been talking to people, what would you say is the question you keep returning to that opens the doors? How would what's the opener, and how have
Uh,
you followed through? What's the one that works
by the
best for
way,
you?
let me try by opening the doors. I take it you mean to further paid consultancy work and things like that.
No, 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 no. I mean, to understand the
Ah,
problems. No, no. Let's stay away from consulting. We'll
oh
do
dear.
advisory work, but we won't do
Okay.
consulting over here.
All right. Okay. So forget the money aspect, but
Oh yeah,
that you're the top managers will allow you to darken their door because they have respect for you.
sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Then I understand the problem. I can tell you it's incredibly simple. I've walked into a very large number of meetings with the board, the top directors, and I have an hour, and they don't know me, and I don't know them. Okay. But I can tell you that they have in their minds one overarching objective or end, like get more profitable or avoid going out of business or make great products again or that mega. Anyway, so now it also turns out that it's not a secret. If I ask them, what's your number one biggest thing you want to improve? They will tell me, or at least they'll pretend to tell me. What they don't tell me, I don't know about. Okay. But they'll say, we need to increase our profit margins or fend off competitive. They'll give you a one-liner like that, almost like a user story. Now, I then say, I didn't hear any numbers like get 36% more usability. You just said make it user-friendly like Microsoft, which is a joke. And a real one, because it really happened with directors of a company. Okay, so I said I noticed there was no. You had a vague statement, like a vision for your strategy. In other words, bullshit. And do you have perhaps a clearer statement anywhere that you can point me to? You can guess the answer. If they had one, they probably would have shown it to me, right? Okay, they said it wouldn't. So I then have a little exercise I do. I call it the ambiguity test. I said, I want every person in this room who write secretly on a piece of paper or their iPhone, their interpretation of that vision in 10 words or less. I then access each one, type it into my computer, put it on the screen so everybody can see what everybody said. And if you ever, by the way, it's absolutely predictable what will happen in advance, no exceptions. 10 different versions, all radically different, and none of them agree with what the CEO wanted. They then say, Tom, you've shown us that we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. Remember that one? But what can we do about it? I mean, after all, we've been to Harvard Business School, we got our MBAs, and we know everything about management, and we don't know what to do. I said, it's very simple. You might like to try to quantify how much user friendliness you're going to put in your product. I do that all the time. Been doing it for decades. And they say, what? Can you do that? Well, I take about 5 minutes and I do it. By the way, you'll find it in chapter 5 in detail in the competitive engineering book, which is free download. You want with 10 different classes of usability that we used at ICL in Britain once to take a very practical example of where we developed some of this stuff and did it. And they went from losing money for 7 years to profit. There's a case study in the PPPP book of ICL in Britain using these methods. The new CEO had to save them for Britain. Rob Wilmot adopted my methods at a very high level. He told his directors, you will quantify all of your bullshit, or you don't have a job and you don't have a budget. You got 1 week. The story's there. It's a true story. The managers I trained, including Rob, went on to get knighthoods. We have a little joke. If you get trained by me, you can get a knighthood. And I've got real people to prove it. Okay, so now at that point in the meeting, when I show them the quantum with a scale, like I just showed you in many of the lecture slides, I show a scale of measure. They say, my God, it can be done. And I say, yes. And then the next question is, can we do this everywhere with everything? I said, yes, it's a universal principle. If it moves, you can quantify it. Very simple. I mean, it's built into nature. God created it. You can't deny it. If it moves, if it has movement, variance, you can quantify. Or, as a famous Scotsman once said, Lord Kelvin, if you think you know something about a subject, try to put a number on it and try to measure it. If you can, maybe you know something about the subject. But if you cannot, you should admit to yourself that your knowledge is of a meager and unsatisfactory kind. So spake the wise Scotsman, president of the Royal Society, and Lord too. Yeah, the Lord speaks back.
Lord Kelvin, yeah. I'm gonna interject here. That's okay because I'm just conscious we are coming up on time.
Yeah.
But no, that was interesting. Thanks, Rob, as ever. It's nice to see you. Actually, I think I've seen you for a while.
By the way, Sathpal,
for the question, yes,
is this being recorded? Is this
yes,
recorded?
it is. Yes, I will
Because
be.
I was
Yes,
having so much fun. I want to have the video of it.
yes. No, we always record predominantly, and
Great.
I will circulate it. Hopefully in a few days once the recording becomes available and I pick up some time to share it. I just wanted to pick up Paul's question because I think it's very
Oh yeah,
relevant and current.
I
So
see it also. Yeah.
thank Paul for and if we could have a sort of, I guess, a very quick, succinct view on that, that would be good because I've got a few announcements I'd like to get out to the group, and then
Right.
I will close the session.
I'll be right.
So
Um, Yeah. By the way, Paul. I'm working with this every day, 100 times. My vague statements in divide coding, and then I think but it's still new for all of us, as you know. Um, let's put it this way: same answer I gave to Monica. It doesn't matter if you're vague. If the design on the screen you get 5 minutes later is crap, you screwed it up. Try again. Be more, try again. If it is exactly what you wanted, then it was good enough. That's my simple answer. That's how I do it.
No,
By the way,
that's really good,
I
actually.
need to add. I need to add something. If you're doing Big Bang waterfall, precision is necessary. If you're doing cheap iterate, forget the cost of it, but it's peanuts compared to real people. Okay, if you can iterate very quickly and see the final result, I mean, this is the ultimate sprint of 2 minutes. What we're talking about, right? Not 2 weeks. Then you can afford to be vague, and if it moves in your right direction, good. By the way, a vague thing which results in something you didn't intend, I find is often a really interesting design I never would have thought of. The keep So vagaries might be a good idea in AI instruction connection. I just thought of that. It's
So
true
that
though.
was actually just to wrap up, summarize it. I was thinking about what you were just saying there, Tom, and to Paul's question, and I was quickly going through some of my notes, and the two things I took away, which are summary for me, rightly or wrongly, were everything you said still came back to the fact that we should design well and continue to work on something and iterate and improve it so it is designed well, because often we don't design things well because we
Yes.
don't know. And also we should be
Hey,
measured. We should be
design.
we
The
should be
missing
measuring,
link
right?
from the
Yeah,
missing
exactly.
link from Agile has
Yeah.
been designed.
Yes. So they were the two things for me. But we'll never get away from the importance of designing something well, whatever that might look
Hurrah,
like.
hurrah,
And
hurrah.
the other thing was measure, right? We should always quantify whatever. And you just gave a perfect example from Lord Kelvin himself that, we should be trying to measure. And really, in reality, everything should be measurable in some meaningful way. And only through measurement can we derive meaning and make, other decisions based on the fact that we've quantified something. So those are my two kind of takeaways. And it was amazing that those continued to be the underlying recurring themes for me. And then you kind of just summarized it. I thought, right, I think I understood what you were getting at. Right,
Good
that's
enough.
fabulous. Brilliant. No, very good, very good. Right, I am going to bring us, because we are up on time. I just want to say thank you again, Tom. It was wonderful to have you here
Can you
as a
can you
guest.
can you see out my window before we
We
go?
can see something. It looks very beautiful, but it is quite far away. But I
It's
think you get the
okay. It's
gist. You
it's
get the gist.
it's the Oslo fjord. The
Yes, it
Oslo
looks that
fjord
looks that
leading
looks
up to
wonderful.
Oslo. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So no, it's actually Oslo's been on my list for many years. I've never made it there, but here's hoping at some point. No, so thank you again. Fabulous session. Uh, and I will circulate the deck because there is a lot of content in there for everyone to follow up on and several pages of references. So I'm sure you'll all have great fun with that. And thank you again for joining. So I do have a few quick updates. So as has become a more recent tradition for us here at Future Work Scotland, we will be taking the summer off. So our next session will be when we return in August. So there'll be no session in June, and there will be no session in July. In the past, we did session all year round, and sometimes several times over the year. So our next one will be with another well-known guest speaker who's also a close friend of the community and of Donald's and I, and has also helped support us as a sponsor in the past. So Martin Hinshaw would be doing a talk around engineering as a leadership system based on his new book, which I have a copy of, and I'm enjoying dipping into. So look out for that. We hope to see you for that. That's in August. So you won't have that in any events for the next few months. Also, just to remind everyone that Lean Agile Scotland is now live. I was at Lean Agile, Agile Manchester last week. I thoroughly enjoyed that. So Lean Agile Scotland, for those of you who are obviously based more locally. But again, feel free to share that around. Couple of other quick ones. One's a personal one for me. So you'll forgive me for a personal plug for a second. As some of you might know, as one of my professional passions, I do Kanban training. And next week I am running a applied professional Kanban course as part of my work with Pro Kanban. So if you're interested in that, or you'd like to talk to me more about the format or the content or the certification exam, etc., and like to do that, please get in touch. I've shared the link to that class in the chat as well. And the last one, which is very hot off the presses, you'll remember if you were with us last month, we hosted Jean-Paul Bailey, and he does great work in the training from the back of the room community. So he had planned for quite some time to run an in-person event in Scotland and Edinburgh. So again, for our more local community members, he has now put that event live and it's available. It will be in September. So again, if you're interested in that, take a look at what he's covering. Any questions, please feel free to get in touch with myself or reach out to JP. I'm sure there's a way to contact him. It's also in our LinkedIn group, so I've shared it in link. Have a look. Systems engineering architecture, love it. But no, a little bit more announcements than usual. We ran a few minutes over, so forgive me. I love to stick to the time box. But hopefully that's some useful continued learning for you all there. And yeah, enjoy the remainder of your morning, your afternoon, your evening, wherever you happen to be. We did have Christina. Christina, I think, dropped off, but she joined us from very early from New Zealand. And we haven't had anybody from New Zealand in a while, so fantastic. And yeah, have a great summer. If you're in the north, I guess. And we will see you in August. Also, if there's anybody you'd like to hear from, particularly in this particular community, feel free to get in touch with me and make a suggestion. We're always happy to take future speaker suggestions. We usually have a backlog we build up quite fast, so we look quite far ahead in our planning horizons, but always happy to take suggestions. So thank you again. It was great to host you, and we hope to see you in August if we don't catch you before. So yeah, take care. All the best. Thanks, everyone.
Slava Ukrainia.